are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Wednesday, January 3rd. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. But before I get into that, as always, I just want to start off by reminding you guys to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, this is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, let's get right into what we're going to talk about for today. So, starting off the show, we're going to go into more detail because I know I touched upon it briefly yesterday. We'll talk about the Steelers' win over the Seahawks and how they're still alive for the playoffs. So we'll get into that. Then the second part of the show, we'll talk about the power rankings that were released this week from NFL.com. So I'll go through them, give you my thoughts on them. The third part of the show, we'll talk about the Cardinals head coach, Jonathan Gannon, coming out and saying that the Cardinals are going to stick with Kyler Murray moving forward. So we'll get into that and how that kind of impacts, what will happen in the draft and what the Cardinals might end up doing. And then in the final part of the show, we'll look at the current playoff picture. We'll look at the current standings, where everything is going into Week 18, the final week of the regular season, which, again, just cannot believe that we're at that point. Like I've been saying, leading up to this, the season went really fast, and the playoffs are going to go even faster. I mean, we're in January right now. I mean, this month is going to fly by. So, but yeah, so that's the rundown for the show. So let's get right into the first topic, which is talking about the Steelers. Because there's some other things I want to touch upon with this as well, mainly the quarterback situation. So obviously the Steelers, last week, coming off of that huge home victory against the Bengals, winning 34-11, and myself included, we counted the Steelers out. Kind of thought that there was, really, little to no chance that they were going to make the postseason because they were struggling offensively, especially. Kenny Pickett got hurt. You lose that game against the Patriots on Thursday night, then you lose to the Colts. You get embarrassed at that triple header. That Saturday triple header, the second game, losing 30-13, and I just knocked over my mic. Because I was, frustrated by it. Anyways, so then, you go up against the Bengals, you put up 34 points, and then against Seattle, which is a tough place to play. And the Steelers haven't played there since 2015, which is a long time ago. That was when Doug Baldwin had 3 touchdowns, I think. He had a monster game in that game. But yeah, so you go into Seattle. Seattle obviously is fighting for their playoff lives, and you end up winning the game 30-23. Back-to-back weeks, you put up 30-plus points with Mason Rudolph at quarterback. Now, has he really been setting the world on fire? Not really. I mean, 274 yards passing, no touchdowns, no interceptions. The previous week, 17-27, 290 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And this is the most game action he's seen in quite some time. Because obviously they brought in Mitchell Trubisky. You draft Kenny Pickett. Mason Rudolph's kind of been the forgotten guy. And he's doing what he's being asked to do. Not turning the ball over. The running game, especially against Seattle, was working. Najee Harris had a great game, when I talked about it yesterday. And he was decent the week before that, 19 carries for 78 yards and a touchdown. Jaylen Warren has been solid this year. He was good in Seattle, 74 yards rushing. George Pickens, though, has really benefited from this quarterback change because these last 2 weeks he has been great. Against the Bengals, 4 receptions for 195 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then 7 receptions for 131 yards. So he's benefited from Mason Rudolph being the quarterback because it just was not working with Mitchell Trubisky, and he had some good games with Kenny Pickett. But these last 2 games, he's really been productive. And listen, the Steelers are a little banged up. They're missing Minkah Fitzpatrick. One of their linebackers, Landon Roberts, he was out for this game against Seattle. And again, Seattle's one of the toughest places to play. But they were able to get the job done, and they're 9-7 right now. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is Kenny Pickett because so he is healthy, but the Steelers seem to still be riding with Mason Rudolph. Now, there's reports out there that he refused to be the backup against the Seahawks, but now he's coming out and saying that he's denying the reports of that. So these are some of the quotes from him. He said, "I saw reports out there that I felt like were attacking my character and how I am as a person, not even getting into a player's standpoint of it. There was no talk of me being a backup this week." And now this thing just popped up as I was reading the quote. This thing just popped up as I was looking at an article online, and now this is in the way, so I can't even view the whole quote. Let me see if I can pull it back up again. So there was no talk of me being a backup quarterback this week in terms of being a 2. If I was healthy enough to play and the trainers and coaches felt like I would look good enough to play, I was going to start and play. So, take that as, take that however you may interpret it. But it is interesting, and I have seen on social media people talking about how Kenny Pickett, listen, he got the starting job, and really doesn't have any competition, so now this is kind of a good thing for him to kind of face some adversity a little bit, because with Mitchell Trubisky, we might see him playing in the UFL, if he keeps playing the way he played as a backup quarterback. How he really fell. Was he really like that good when he started? No. But 2018 he was okay. He was decent. But he was horrible in the games that he played in for the Steelers. So I don't know what's going to end up happening with him. He's probably going to be out of the league. The way he performed. But with Mason Rudolph, he might have supposed to be Ben Roethlisberger's replacement. Like, that's where it was going to end up. I don't know why I worded that that way, but he was supposed to be Ben Roethlisberger's replacement. It was set up that way. And then once Ben retired and they drafted Kenny Pickett, and they bring in Trubisky, Mason Rudolph kind of just was the third quarterback. Now, not to say when Mason Rudolph did start that he was good. He really wasn't that good. But I think he's really taken this opportunity, taking advantage of this opportunity, and he's put the Steelers in a good spot. Now they're going to be playing against the Ravens, which is going to be a tough game, even if the Ravens aren't playing their starters. It's a divisional game. I still think right now I think the line is 4. Steelers are favored by 4. I'm not really that confident in the Steelers, taking them as the favorites. Because again, it's a divisional game. Now, do I think the Steelers will win this game? on Saturday. I mean, I think they should, because if you're playing against the Ravens backups with your starters, you should win. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, Tyler Huntley played in that game, that Sunday night game last year against the Ravens, and then it came down to Kenny Pickett having to have that game-winning fourth quarter drive, the touchdown to Najee Harris. That was still a tough game, so it's going to be a tough game here. So again, I think the Steelers should win. I don't know if they're going to win comfortably. It might be a bit of a sweat. But you know what? I think in this scenario, it's like they're riding the hot hand. And listen, the Steelers' offense last 2 weeks, running the football better. You're putting up 30 points or more. 34 against the Bengals, 30 against Seattle in Seattle, which is again one of the toughest places to play in. So what are you going to go back to Kenny Pickett now? I think you got to continue to ride Mason Rudolph out. And you could very well. I mean, they could win on Thursday or Saturday, and the other teams around them win and they don't end up making the playoffs. But you know what? Right now, Mason Rudolph is giving them the best chance to win. So I think they're doing the right thing by sticking with him. And, then we'll see what happens next year. Again, Mike Tomlin clinches another winning season, has never had a losing season. So it doesn't look like his job security is in jeopardy. Because I know we did talk about that. Is it possible that the Steelers just were playing terrible. But this is what happens, though. When you count the Steelers out, then they end up proving you wrong. Now, that doesn't mean that they go all the way to the Super Bowl and win it. No, but when you count them out, they play better. They get that, they're in it to the last week of the regular season. Just like last year. I mean, last year, what were they, like 2-6 at one point, 3-6, something like that? And they ended up finishing 9-8, and just missing the playoffs. Which I feel like is going to be the same thing again. If they finish 10-7, that still might not be enough to get you in. So, we'll see what ends up happening. But, yeah, I mean, Kenny Pickett, he's got a little bit of adversity to deal with here, and we'll see how he responds to that. Because let's see what happens going into next year. I mean, I guess Mason Rudolph's going to be on this team next year, I would think, right? I don't know what his contract situation is. If somebody knows, I mean, I'll have to look into it. But, I mean, if he's on this team next year, he should be the backup quarterback, at least. There should be a competition between him and Kenny Pickett, unless the Steelers decide we're going to just try to get another quarterback in here because we might not have the guy. So, it'll be something that we got to keep an eye on. I know who won't be the quarterback next year, and that's Mitchell Trubisky. He should not be on this team next year because he was awful in the games that he played in. So, and then look at what the Steelers are doing right now. It just seems like George Pickens, over 100 yards, back-to-back weeks. Almost 200 yards against the Bengals. Running the football better. I mean, yeah, the offense is playing better. And again, the defense is dealing with some injuries, but you still, as long as you got T.J. Watt, they're fine. Well, I shouldn't say they're fine, but it's a lot different when they don't have T.J. Watt because he's the quarterback of the defense. I mean, obviously, like I said before, Minkah Fitzpatrick being out is huge. You're hoping to get him back. But, as long as T.J. Watt is healthy, that you should still have confidence in the defense. But I know some people will think differently, But yeah, so the Steelers are still alive. They're still in this thing. So yeah, they play the Ravens on Saturday. That'll be at 4:30, I believe, 4:30 Eastern time. The ABC ESPN doubleheader. So yeah, but yeah, that's pretty much it when talking about this. So when we come back from our first break of the show, we are then going to talk about the power rankings that were released this week, and I'll go through them. I'll give you my thoughts on them, what I agree with, what I disagree with. So that is what we'll do when we come back from our first break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about the power rankings that were released this week, and I'll give you my thoughts on that, what I agree with, what I disagree with. And again, I always try to go as fast as I can, but this segment always flies by, so I'm always just speeding up at the end because, obviously we don't have a lot of time between each segment because each segment goes so fast. Anyway, so we go to 32, Panthers. I mean, you put up 30 points against the Packers defense, and then, you get shut out against C.J. Beathard and the Jags. So it's just, and then you got the owner throwing, drinks on the fans. We'll have to talk about that during the week. But yeah, that was not a good look for Dave Tepper. But yeah, Panthers at 32, Commanders at 31. I mean, it's just... Listen, I thought they had something with Sam Howell, but it really doesn't look like that right now. He has not been good for a while. And, the Commanders, I mean, I don't know what their plan is for the offseason, but there's going to be a lot of changes. We just know that. 30, you got the Patriots. I mean, listen, Bailey Zappi threw 3 picks, but they only lost by 6 to the Bills. They had their chances. But anyways, they're at 30. 29 is the Cardinals, only going up 1 spot after beating the Eagles in Philly. And we'll talk about them in the next segment. But I mean, good for them for getting that win. They really screwed up the Eagles with their playoff positioning. But yeah, I mean that was a good performance by Kyler Murray, James Conner too. I mean, yeah, I feel like they could have went up a little bit higher. Giants are at 28, right in the same spot as last week. Back-to-back competitive losses. It's that's just the Giants. Like I said, they're the team of almosts and ifs. So they're at 28. So then we move on to 27. The Chargers. I mean, listen, you're competitive against the Bills, then against Jarrett Stidham and the Broncos. They just couldn't generate any kind of offense. It's been a rough one for the Chargers, and hopefully they can rebound next year. Anyways, we go to 26. The Titans. Blowout loss to the Texans with C.J. Stroud being back. Will Levis got hurt in this game. So they brought in Tannehill, and he just couldn't get anything going. So we'll see if they play spoiler versus Jacksonville on Sunday at home. Then the Jets at 25. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what happened to their defense. I mean, look, their defense, I think, gave up on Thursday against the Browns. I was impressed that they were able to, go and go down the field on the first drive. After the Browns went down the field on their first drive and scored a touchdown. But then, after that, Trevor Siemian throws the pick six. It's another team that it's been a rough year. But, yeah, they're at 25. Falcons at 24. Blowout loss to the Bears. But they still got a chance to win the division, if they can win and the Bucs lose. So, Raiders at 23. They had that big win against Kansas City on Christmas, but they couldn't repeat that against the Colts. Of course, they had the backdoor cover against me, which stunk. But, those kinds of losses happen to me when it comes to picking in the spread. So then you got the Broncos at 22. They pretty much stayed in the same spot, 8-8. They picked up the win against the Chargers. Jarrett Stidham, his highlight play was, it was really little Jordan Humphrey's highlight play. Stidham threw a pass to him, and he just, took it to the house. Chargers just couldn't tackle on that play. But yeah, the Broncos, 8-8, and we'll see if they can finish this year with a winning record. Vikings dropped down to 3 spots to 21. Curious decision by putting in Jaron Hall at quarterback to start the game as opposed to just going with either Nick Mullins or Josh Dobbs. Because if they would have started with one of those guys, that would have been a different game. But we'll talk about the Packers when we get to them. But yeah, that was a curious decision. And Kirk Cousins doesn't get hurt, this team is probably a playoff team. So it's unfortunate with what happened with the Vikings. The Bears have been playing great as of late. Justin Fields has been good. The defense, though, has been the bigger story. They got a chance to knock the Packers out of the playoffs if they could beat them on Sunday in Lambeau. And we'll see if they stick with Justin Fields. That'll be something to keep an eye on. Seahawks dropped down a few spots, losing to the Steelers. They're at 19. The Bengals dropped down 4 spots, dropping to 18 after the loss to the Chiefs. They were up by 10, and then they didn't score at all in the second half. That was another cover that hurt my chances. So, yeah, they're at 18. The Saints are at 17. They went up 6 spots. That was a big win against the Bucs. Where was that all year? Really? They are one of the most inconsistent teams this year. And, listen, they still got a chance. If they beat the Falcons and the Buccaneers lose, then they're in. And they're hosting a playoff game. But, if they could have played like this earlier in the season, we wouldn't be having this conversation. They would have had the division wrapped up already. 16 is the Packers. I feel like they should be higher. I feel like they should be over the Steelers. Even though, the Steelers and the Bucs did beat them. But Jordan Love has been playing really well as of late. And Packers might have their future franchise QB right here. Steelers are at 15. They've been playing better offensively. They went up a couple of spots. The Bucs went down 4. They're at 14. That was a bad loss to the Saints. But they still... Listen, it's right in front of them. They just got to win and they're in. So... then the Colts are at 13. They went up a couple of spots. Actually all the AFC South teams. So you got the Colts at 13, the Jags at 12, and then the Texans at 11. I don't disagree with that. I think right now, listen, I think the Texans might. I think the Texans will get into the playoffs. I think with Trevor Lawrence being back, the Jags win on Sunday, but if they don't, that's going to be really bad if they don't. I think the Colts, unfortunately, might be the odd team out, but they're going to be a good team next year. So we'll see. And then in the top 10, so we got the Rams at 10. I think they're playing like a top 10 team right now, even though, the Giants kind of gave them some problems on Sunday. But, Kyren Williams... Ever since he's come back, the Rams have been a different team. They've been scoring a lot more points. The receivers have been great. Stafford's been playing well, except on Sunday threw a couple of picks. The defense, is not the same defense it was when they won the Super Bowl. So in the offseason, they're going to have to, fix the defense a little bit, rebuild that up. Because if they could do that, and Stafford can come back and play well with Cooper Kupp, with Puka Nacua, Kyren Williams again running the football. This is going to be a good team, going forward. Stafford's still got some good years left if they could protect him, So then you got the Eagles at 9. They dropped down 5 spots. I can't disagree with that. You just lost to the Cardinals, so I can't disagree with that. Their defense, that's a defense that has not been playing good. So then you got the Chiefs at 8, got back on track against the Bengals. Isaiah Pacheco's been running the football well. They weren't lollygagging. They didn't do any of these, trick plays, and they just had Harrison Butker kick field goals, pretty much the whole game after the first touchdown. And the first and only touchdown they had of the game. But, still, we have our concerns with this team. Then 7 is the Browns. This team is going to be very scary in the playoffs. If Joe Flacco can limit the turnovers... This is a good team. This team is going to give teams problems in the postseason. Then at 6, you got the Bills. It's crazy how they could either get the 2 seed or miss the playoffs entirely. But we'll see what happens. And then the top 5, you got the Lions at 5. They should have beat Dallas. Let's be honest. I still think Dallas is better than them, but they should have beaten Dallas. Then you got the Dolphins at 4. Yeah, I mean, you got to put them there. I feel like after that blowout loss, maybe you flip-flop the Lions and the Dolphins, but I don't know. Then you got Dallas at 3, 49ers 2, Ravens 1. I don't have any complaints there. I think the top 3 is right. Dallas at 3, 49ers at 2, Ravens at 1. I think the Cowboys are, even though the Dolphins did beat the Cowboys, I don't know. I still think the Cowboys are better. They're better than the Lions. But that's the top 5 though. So let me know what you guys think about the power rankings. We did have some comments here, so we'll go through that. The Falcons will crumble under their power. I don't know if that's what was trying to be said. Yeah, I mean they haven't been great recently. I see you can't get distracted with the chat during the podcast. Of course, makes sense. Yeah, I mean I was just going through the power rankings. I don't know about the NFL, but you seem like a very good informer. Nice job. I appreciate that. But yeah, it's I try to do what I can. I mean, listen, there's other people that are more knowledgeable than me. I know what I know, so that's basically the best way to put it. But it's also to obviously interact with the viewers, which is the one thing that I want to do more of, as we get more comments, in the chat. Because I don't want it to just be me, talking for an hour with, nobody saying anything in the chat. I want to be able to respond to comments, listen to your guys' opinions on things, because that's really what this is all about. And we're working towards that. And obviously, again, like I've been talking about, there's going to be more, shows in the coming weeks. So you'll be more familiar with, with some new faces. And it's going to be a fun time. They'll be on my show. I'll be on other shows as well. It's going to be an exciting weeks are coming up. So, but yeah. But that's pretty much it when talking about the power rankings. Again, let me know what you guys think about the power rankings for this week. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? The top 5 was the Lions, the Dolphins, Cowboys, 49ers, Ravens. And, yeah, I can't disagree with that. Can't really disagree with that. So with that, before we go into our next break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, when we get back from our second break of the show, we're going to talk about Kyler Murray because Jonathan Gannon, their head coach, came out and said that basically that they're going to stick with Kyler moving forward. So I'll talk about that. I'll give you my opinion on it. And that is what we'll do when we come back from our second break of the show. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are now going to talk about the Cardinals. Basically, their head coach coming out and saying they're going to stick with Kyler Murray going forward. So Jonathan Gannon made an appearance, his weekly appearance on the Burns and Gambo show, and he said that there's no doubt that Kyler Murray will be his starting quarterback starting in 2024. He said Murray's our franchise quarterback. So they're going to stick with him. And right now the Cardinals, they are in position. Well, they have a top 5 pick in this upcoming draft. So right now they're at. We'll pull up Tankathon really quick. So right now they have the 4th pick in the draft. So ahead of them are the Bears, who clinched the number 1 overall pick with the Panthers losing again. The Commanders are at 2, Patriots at 3, and then they're at 4. The Giants are then behind them at 5. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. They could go offensive linemen. I mean, they're probably not going to get Marvin Harrison Jr., because they need some help with the receiver too. Because you have Marquise Brown there, Michael Wilson, the rookie, Rondell Moore. But you need. I mean, they got rid of DeAndre Hopkins. But they're going to need another, big time target for Kyler Murray. And obviously, you still got James Conner, who's been playing well in recent weeks. But the Cardinals, they have a lot of things they need to address here in the offseason. But to look at Kyler's stats since he's come back, just pull those up right now. So he's got an 86.8 quarterback rating. 1,500 yards passing, 9 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's been okay since he's been back. Listen, 3 touchdowns against Philly, comeback win. I mean, that was a big win for them. I did say they're probably going to win a few more games, but they're 4-12 right now. I mean, could they win on Sunday against Seattle? Yeah, I think so. But now, is this the right decision? I think so. Because what you have in Kyler. With if you go in a different direction, I mean, who knows what's going to end up happening? Like, you could end up, missing out on a guy, and you end up picking the wrong quarterback, and then that sets you back even further. With Kyler, I mean, when Kyler's healthy, Kyler's a solid quarterback. Now, I mean, when he came into the league, it looked like he was going to be one of the, the better quarterbacks in the NFL. But injuries, obviously he tore his ACL late in the season last year. The Cardinals didn't finish with a great record. And obviously there's been, some behind-the-scenes stuff, and, whether Kyler's committed to the team, and, obviously there's all the Call of Duty jokes. Whenever there's a new Call of Duty that drops, Kyler's not going to, play, something like, it's just, there was a lot of question marks, or not a lot, but some question marks with Kyler and his commitment. But, listen, they signed him in before the 2022 season. They signed him to a 5-year, $230.5 million contract extension. So, they got to be committed to him. So, and they have some pieces that they could build around. Like I said, Trey McBride, ever since, Zach Ertz got hurt, and he's kind of taken over as the, the top tight end, he's been solid. So, they got some pieces that they could build around, but, they got a lot of work to do. But, looking back to when the Cardinals, made the playoffs, they got bounced out by the Rams. I don't even think Kyler didn't even finish the game, I don't think. That definitely left a lot of, bitter taste in some people, because just how that game went. And listen, how the Cardinals started off. The Cardinals had the best record in the NFL at one point, a couple years ago, and then the wheels kind of fell off, and they just they flamed out, and then they were one and done against the Rams. Then last year, I think they were 4-8 when he tore his ACL against the Patriots on that Monday night. So it's been a rough couple of years for Kyler and the Cardinals. Obviously Cliff Kingsbury getting fired. They bring in Jonathan Gannon. So we'll see. And the Cardinals have been competitive in a lot of games this year. They've beaten Dallas and they've beaten Philly. Giants were able to beat them. That comeback win in week 2. I know my friends are going crazy and being like, yeah, Daniel Jones, he's the guy. And I'm like, we beat the Cardinals. We had no business winning that game. And that was when it was like, all right, the season's back on. I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. And here we are. They're 5-11. But the Cardinals, they've won games that they shouldn't have won. Like I said, against Dallas and Philly, they've been competitive. They were beating the Bengals at one point when the Bengals started to click on all cylinders. When Jamar Chase had that 3-touchdown game, they were winning that game at one point. They've been a scrappy team. And listen, they can, good draft, get some free agents. I say that about basically every team. Because again, it's easier said than done. This could be a scrappy team. And, if Kyler stays healthy, and you could give him some protection, maybe get another wide receiver. The Cardinals, they'll be a scrappy team next year, that you're not going to want to deal with. But again, I think for me, I think it's the right move. Because again, it's hard to find. Now, again, do I think Kyler Murray is one of the top quarterbacks in the league? No, but I think if he's able to look like the Kyler Murray before the ACL injury, he can get back to being a top 10 quarterback. And everybody talks about his size, and like I said before, the stuff with the commitment issues and him, I think it was they wanted him to watch film and he wasn't doing that. I don't know. That whole situation was weird, but it's I think it's like I said, I think it's the right move, because again, you could risk letting Kyler go, and you bring in a new quarterback, and again, that sets you back even further. Now, this quarterback class is going to be good. One of the better quarterback classes, in recent years. So, we'll see, what ends up happening. But the Cardinals, you keep Kyler and you just build the team up around him. I think that's the right way to go. With the Bears, it's a little different, just because they have the number 1 overall pick, so they could do a lot of things with that. They could also trade Fields and get a bunch of picks. There's so many things they could do. The Cardinals, they don't have the top pick, but they are in the top 5. But I agree with them keeping Kyler. He's just got to stay healthy. He's got to stay healthy. The other thing too is they're in a tough division. You look at the Rams in the season they've had. Obviously, the 49ers are the class of the NFC West, and they're not going to be going anywhere for a while, unless guys get hurt. In Seattle, even after trading Russell Wilson, made the playoffs last year. Again, have a chance to make the playoffs again this year, even with Geno Smith not having as good of a year as he did last year. The division's tough. It's one of the toughest divisions in the NFL. The Cardinals, they're a last place team right now. So they got some work to do, but I think they have a better quarterback situation than the Seahawks. I think Kyler at full strength against Geno Smith. You would take Kyler. Matthew Stafford, he's getting older. I don't know how much longer he's going to be playing for. So the Rams are going to be looking for a quarterback soon. And people still have their question marks with Brock Purdy, but I think for now he's the guy. So Cardinals, stick with Kyler, because you know what you have in him. If you could surround him with talent, he's shown that in the past that he can be a solid quarterback. And since he's come back, I mean, the Cardinals, they beat the Eagles in Philly. I think they're making the right decision. So, again, we'll see what the Cardinals end up doing. If they, how they approach the draft, what they can surround Kyler with. I mean, you got the quarterback. Now you just got to, build around him. The offensive line is like the most important thing. That's the one. That's what you got to do. Like, you look at the Giants. I mean, like, are they gonna draft a quarterback? Even if they do, the offensive line is still a mess. I mean, in recent years, it really does go to show you how important an offensive line is. I mean, again, the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers gets hurt 4 plays into the season. And that was the one problem I had. How's the offensive line going to be? Wasn't good. So, I think that's... But the Cardinals, they have a lot of holes that other than offensive line, that they got to address. So, might take a couple of years, but they got Kyler Murray on that extension. You just got to work. You got to work towards rebuilding this roster, getting it back to being a playoff team like it was a couple years ago. So again, easier said than done. They got to hit on the picks. Free agency. What free agents can they maybe bring in? To help improve the team. We'll see. But I think for me, I think it's the right move sticking with Kyler. But let me know what you guys think. Are the Cardinals making the right decision by sticking with Kyler Murray? Do you think they should go in a different direction, move off of him, and try to draft, one of these quarterbacks with them picking in the top 5? It's an interesting debate to be had because you could see both sides. Maybe you feel like the Cardinals can't. Right now, do I think Kyler Murray can win a Super Bowl? Not right now. You got to see him succeed in the playoffs. And the one playoff game that we saw, he didn't play great, So, but I think for right now, just because it's like, again, it's hard to find quarterbacks, because for some teams, I mean, they just constantly recycling quarterbacks over and over again. The New York teams are having that problem right now. So, yeah, I think they're making the right decision, but I can understand, like, maybe, we might not, with the Cardinals, maybe they can't win a Super Bowl maybe Kyler can't take them to that next level, and they should move off of him. But I think for right now, you stick with Kyler and see, maybe if they can rebuild this team, get it back to being a playoff team. Maybe Kyler gets another chance to prove himself in the postseason. Maybe he proves the doubters wrong. So we'll see what happens. But, that's pretty much it with this topic. Like I said, let me know what you guys think. Are the Cardinals making the right decision sticking with Kyler, or should they move off of him? With that, we're going to take our final break of the show, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at the current standings, where everything is right now going into the final week of the regular season. And that is what we'll do when we come back from our final break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, We're going to look through the current standings going into Week 18. A lot of stuff has been wrapped up, but there is still things that are left to be decided. Both South divisions, we don't have a winner yet, but we will finally once the regular season ends. So right now, we'll go through. Well, all right. So we'll go through the AFC first. So the Dolphins, they have a playoff spot. So the AFC East isn't finalized yet. So if the Bills win, they win the division. But if the Dolphins win, then they win the division. And like I talked about before, if the Bills lose, they can end up just flat out missing the playoffs completely. So, we'll find out what the situation is when we get to Sunday night because that's when these two teams play each other. But if it comes down to the Bills having to, they have to win the game to get in, that's only going to add to the intensity of, this game coming up. So, yeah, but the Dolphins are already in. Then you got the Ravens who clinched home field advantage. We'll see, if they play the starters at all on Saturday. Maybe they play them for a quarter, a half. I think you at least have them play a little bit because, everybody's talking about, well, a couple of years ago or a few years ago when they played the Titans in the playoffs, they had that long layoff because they had the first round bye. They didn't play their starters the final week. And they were really rusty. They might not do that this time around. So the Browns, I guess the Browns are going to rest their starters too because they're kind of locked into the fifth seed. But yeah, they're in the playoffs. Joe Flacco is going to be the starting quarterback. It really is just, it's so strange that that's the case. But listen, Browns have been playing good. They've been playing good. They're a good team. They're going to be a tough team to get to face in the playoffs. Then you got the Steelers at 9-7. The Bengals got eliminated. So yeah, and then you go to the AFC South. It's a three-way tie right now, 9-7. You got the Colts and the Texans. They're going to be playing on Saturday night, which is a big game. And then of course you got the Jags playing the Titans on Sunday. We'll see what happens. But obviously, whoever loses on Saturday, it's going to be a tough I don't think it eliminates the teams from the playoffs, but it obviously will make it significantly harder. You're going to need a lot of help to still get in. Chiefs, they clinched the division, the AFC West, so they're probably not going to play anybody next week against or this upcoming week against the Chargers. But yeah, who's gonna knock off the Chiefs? Who's gonna be that team that does that? In that division, because it just seems like it's gonna be the Chiefs every year. Then in the NFC East, so you got the Eagles and the Cowboys both clinching playoff spots. So really, it's if the Cowboys win, the division is theirs. The Eagles need to win and a Cowboys loss for them to, get the division. But they really hurt their chances losing to the Cardinals. So we'll see. Lions, they clinched the division. We know that already. Packers and the Vikings are still in it. Packers is just a win and in scenario. Vikings, they need to win and a lot of help. They need the Packers to lose. They need a lot of teams. They need Seattle to lose. They need teams in the South to lose. Yeah, it's going to be a tall task. Packers, easiest task is you win and you're in. So, and we'll see if they do that. Because the funny thing is, so you got the Bears who have nothing to play for basically, coming into Lambeau Field, final week of the regular season. In the Packers, all the Packers have to do is win and they're in. Last year was the same thing. Coming off of a blowout win against the Vikings, which again happened on Sunday. You're playing against a divisional opponent that has nothing to play for at home, and you just need to win and you're in. And you got Seattle, who could basically get in if you don't. If it happens 2 years in a row, that would be, Packers fans would probably, well, I don't want to say they're going to lose their minds, but they're not going to be happy. But Jordan Love is playing really well. But the Bears have been are a better team than they were when these teams faced each other in Week 1. So I think it should be a good game. So we'll see what happens. Then you got in the NFC South, you got The Saints and the Bucks both tied. Bucks, they just got to win and they're in. I'm nervous that they're not going to win. I feel like they're going to lose the game. Now, I don't know if I'm going to take the Panthers because I don't trust the Panthers either, but I could definitely see the Bucks losing. And everything we talked about with Baker Mayfield in these final weeks of the season is all out the window then if they lose this game. Saints, they finally looked like a good team, against the Bucks on Sunday, And if they played like that all year, they would have had the division. And the Falcons, they still have a chance. I mean, they need the Bucks to lose and them to win. So we'll see. I mean, Taylor Heineke might not play in this game because he's a little banged up. So we'll see. Then we go to the NFC West, of course. The 49ers, they wrapped up the division home field advantage. Then you got the Rams. They're in the playoffs. Back there, for the first time since the Super Bowl year. Obviously didn't make it last year with all the injuries that they had. Seahawks are 8-8, still in it. Then we go over to the wild card situation. So right now, you got the Ravens at the 1, Dolphins at the 2, Chiefs at the 3, Jags at the 4. Those are the top 4 seeds. The Browns are basically locked into the 5 seed. You got the Bills at the 6, the Colts at the 7, the Texans and the Steelers. Those are the other teams involved. So, I mean, the Steelers lost to both the Colts and the Texans. The Steelers basically they need a Bills loss because the Steelers have a better conference record. So I think that's why. So they would get in over the Bills if the Bills were to lose and they were to win. So they would end up being the 7 seed, because the Colts and the Texans both beat them this year. The Texans beat them 30-6. Colts beat them 30-13. The Steelers have to win on Saturday, and then they need a Bills loss, and then they should get it. I think they also need a Jags loss too, because the Jags also beat them. That's kind of how the wild card there is shaping out. I mean, we'll see. I mean, the Jags, it's been a rough stretch for them. How many games have they lost in a row now? Well, actually, no. Well, they just beat the Panthers. But before that, they were on a 4-game losing streak. So now you're playing the Titans. So we'll see, if they can win that game. They should, but who knows? Then you go over to the NFC. So the 49ers, they're locked in at the 1. Cowboys at the 2. Lions at the 3. Buccaneers at the 4. I see the Cowboys winning, getting the 2 seed. Lions are going to be locked in at the 3. And then the Buccaneers are at the 4. So they'll play most likely the Eagles. Then you got the Rams who are basically locked in at the 6. And then it's that 7 seed. It's going to come down to, the Packers, the Seahawks, the Saints. Packers at home, you would think they're going to win, but it is going to be a tough game. It is going to be a tough game. But I'd like to see them get in. And the Packers has been a roller coaster because I was like, oh, maybe they'll be a wild card team. Then it's like, maybe not. Now it's like, maybe they will. Then maybe not because then they lost to the Giants. And then they lost to the Bucs at home. Now they're back in the conversation again. But does that mean that they are going to finish it off and get in this time? We'll see. Because if they win, they're going to play either the Eagles or the Cowboys or the Lions. If the Lions win and then the Eagles and the Cowboys both lose, which I think both teams should win. But again, with the Eagles, who knows? They just lost to the Cardinals. For me, so I'm going to say, well, I think the Texans will win on Saturday, so I think they get in. I think the Jags win, so unfortunately the Colts are going to get knocked out. I just have a hard time seeing the Bills not making the playoffs, so I'm going to say they win and get in. So the Steelers, unfortunately, at 10-7 will not make this. So the Steelers will finish with a better record this year than they did last year, but they won't make the playoffs still. But But if they didn't lose to the Cardinals and the Patriots, you would have had a better record. You could have been locked into a playoff spot, but fortunately not. I think the Packers get in. I think they should. But, I mean, listen, I just said all these scenarios. One of them is going to not be right. So, but we'll see. I'm just happy that the Rams got in. I did not want to see. I did not want to see this team not. I didn't want to see this team not make it. I mean, I think they should be in. And listen, give them credit because I was like, I don't know if this team's gonna make it. But once Kyron Williams back, that changed everything because this team was putting up 30 points a game. Stafford was playing better. Cooper Kupp, was playing how he not exactly like a couple years ago, but still, it's finding the end zone more. Puka Nacua has been great. Demarcus Robinson has made some plays. Scored a touchdown in 4 straight games. I mean, this team has definitely looked better. So this team deserves to be in the wild card. And right now, we might be getting that Stafford Lions matchup in the first round. See, but everyone's talking about that. But what about on the other side? Jared Goff's going to be playing his former team in the playoffs. But I guess it's because Stafford's going back to Detroit for the first time since the trade. Because the last time these teams played, it was the year they went to the Super Bowl. The Lions weren't very good. And that was at SoFi. Now it's, Goff made his return home to, SoFi, even though it was his home for, a year, basically. So I don't even know if you really want to consider that. But I'm really hoping that that's the first round matchup because that should be a great game. Really should. You got 2 good offenses going at it. Rams are another team that you got to be careful about with the playoffs. Because they have a really good offense. And of course, Aaron Donald can wreck a game on defense. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much it with the show for today. Thank you guys for watching, for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow. This is no Thursday night game. That's it. No more Thursdays. No more Thursday previews. So we'll talk about some other things. I know I did mention it before, but I did want to talk about the Dave Tepper throwing the drink on the Jacksonville fan. I think we'll get into that at some point, between tomorrow or Friday. We'll figure it out. And also we got the baseball show on Friday as well. I mean, again, these weeks just fly by. It's unbelievable. Yeah, so no Thursday night game tomorrow, so there'll be no Thursday night preview. Obviously no Monday night game either, but we got Saturday games, we got the Sunday games, and then you got the National Championship on Monday between Michigan and Washington again. Went 2-0 in the college football playoff picks. Taking Washington and Michigan. That ended up, again, I'm not a genius. I'm not a college football expert. But, getting called out and saying I'm going to go 0-2, what do you got to say now? That's in the comments. What do you got to say now? But it is what it is. I mean, listen, it's all luck. But, yeah, so with that is all the time that we have for today. I thank you guys for watching. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care.